And Damian is going to ask us to step back into fundraising time and to learn from the rich history of those fundraisers who came before us. So, if we can all give a really, really big round of applause for Damian.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Cam. If anybody doesn't know, Cam won this in 2019, so no pressure. On the 10th of May, 1941, Westminster Abbey, which was to be saved at all costs, was saved from the worst of the destruction at the expense of the House of Parliament, when over 700 tons of high explosive and 80,000 incendiaries were dropped across London. Burning beans and molten lead fell from the roof onto the chair and onto the choir stalls. A bit weird. Let's keep going. The famous lantern roof crashed down onto the crossing. The roof over the tomb of the unknown warrior was hit repeatedly, and the deanery was totally destroyed. Over the next decade, lumps of stone fell from the vast ceilings. The pillars supported the great roof. Do you mind using the handheld? Just for a second. Of course I can. Round two. You do realise you've got to listen to the start all over again. To quote the American House of Representatives, reclaiming my time, Mr. Speaker. Over the next decade, lumps of stone fell from the vast ceilings. The pillars supporting the great roof began to crumble, and there was no money in the church funds to pay for the works. A £1 million capital appeal was needed for the restoration. On the 30th of January 1953, then Prime Minister Winston Churchill launched the appeal, conceived by the Dean of Westminster, asking everyone in the country to donate £1. A choir boy presented a £1 note from the new Queen. John Gielgud gave a reading and £1. And the newspapers, television and radio published everything. So far, so normal. Within a few weeks, however, the appeal being launched, the East Coast floods happened and a national disaster appeal was launched from Mansion House by the Lord Mayor of London. The Abbey's appeal took a back seat. And it didn't get going again until April that year. Problem is, it was just getting going again when disaster struck the appeal once more, but of a different kind. On the 2nd of June, 1953, more than 27 million people in the UK watched and listened to the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II live through the power of television and radio. Over 3 million new television sets were purchased by households for this occasion, with the pictures beamed across the Commonwealth and around the world, with an audience of over 150 million people globally watching it. That's a problem for a capital campaign when you're talking about dilapidated buildings. Because everyone saw the grandeur, the splendour, the magnificence of it all, and wondered why on earth were they being asked for a donation. By the end of July, it became clear that there was no hope of reaching the £1 million target. And this is where my IWITOT comes in. Because unlike many campaigns that would have quietly given up, gone into the shadows, sought funds in other ways, this campaign decided to do it different. The organiser was changed from the Dean, who knew nothing about fundraising, to the Assistant Receiver General, who actually had been running the campaign all along. A dedicated press officer and Mr. Ensom of the Spottiswoode Advertising Agency were drafted in, and they made changes fast. £1 a head, nice idea, dropped. Maximum support, sought. Those people who'd given £1 were told that's all you need to give. It was rubbish. Maximum support, sought. Personal letters were sent to the banks, the stock exchange, the city corporation, every large company and certain trusts. Industry letters were sent out to the 1,000 largest companies. Letters were circulated and telephone calls made to every local authority, asking for their cooperation in Save the Abbey Week. No idea what it was, but they wanted their support early, just in case they ran something. Letters were sent out to every education director across the country, every political party constituency, and 30,000 sports clubs received a letter. And the General Secretary of the TUC themselves sent a personal letter to each and every trade union representative. An appeal was made to all ranks of the military, and the Worshipful Company of Brewers arranged for a letter to be handed to every public house in the country, while the Foreign Office dispatched cables to every diplomatic mission and station around the world. That's what they did in 3 weeks. The following week saw every one of the 35,000 donors who'd given £1, £35,000 in 3 months. That's how much they'd raised, asking them to increase their donation. That's week 4. Save the Abbey Week was organised for the end of November. That was week 5. And to change public opinion, the optics of the Abbey had to be influenced. So week 6 saw journalists and broadcasters shown around the room full of crumbling masonry and bits of beam that had fallen from around the Abbey, all 18 tons of it. The new committee realised that if the campaign was to succeed, they needed to influence the story and make it widely appealing. So at the end of August, every female journalist in the country was invited to the Abbey for a garden party with a difference. The rubble was brought out. Archdeacon Fox read a very carefully crafted speech, and the intention was to mobilise journalists into action. And it worked. Every week for the remainder of the year, there was a featured news story relating to the appeal. From the Cubs and Scouts of London lining the streets with silver coins all the way to the Abbey, to the people of Derbyshire who practiced something called well dressing and had crafted a special version of the Abbey that was then taken around the country by special trailer collecting money as it went. They inspired everything. Save the Abbey Week in November, set in train. You know, this is a hell of a gig. Save the Abbey Week in November, set in train a series of special services at the Abbey. Every day during November at 9 o'clock in the morning, a senior representative from one of the Commonwealth countries climbed all 300 stairs to the top of the flag tower to hoist the flag of their country, garnering global attention in different countries every single day. New York, Australia. I think the Chicago Times is on there. You've also got a paper from Zimbabwe. The line of pennies that the Cubs and Scouts and Guides had put together went full scale. And celebrities and personalities arranged to attend and were photographed. That got the local press every single day. They decided to call it the Silver Mile, a mile of silver coins, all the way to the door of the Abbey. It was so popular that they ended up with 18 lines of pennies, side by side by side, a mile long. By the 31st of December that year, they'd only set themselves a 12-month time frame, the bank balance stood at £800,000. But as anyone will tell you working in capital appeals, once a campaign like this has captured the imagination of the public, you can't stop it. So by the end of March 1954, when the daily total of posts was down to just 1 sack of mail a day, the appeal had exceeded £1.1 million. The total cost of the campaign was £35,000, or 3.5%. Anybody got a conversion at 3.5%? Me neither. And because the works took so long to complete, the interest on the amount raised actually resulted in a lasting legacy that saves the Abbey decade after decade to come. 1.1 million raised at a cost to income ratio of 3.5%. There we go. From a global audience in effectively 9 months. I wish I'd thought of that.
There we go. That was our first amazing speaker for IWITOT 2023. That was Damian Chapman, the Larger Than Life fundraiser from, he's the Director of Fundraising and Communications at Charity for Civil Servants. So no wonder he's talking about Westminster Abbey here in London. That was such an amazing idea. Obviously, I think there's a lot we can learn from history in fundraising, which is really interesting. Innovation doesn't just have to be doing something new or with AI. It's all about learning from our past. And what I really loved is that it touched so many different streams of fundraising, which was really cool to see as well. So now we are on to